Welcome in to the Skol Purple Podcast, episode number 25. Kevin Brown joins me. I'm Carson Schubert. Glad to be with you on this Thursday evening. And Kevin, how are things going down there for you today?
Very well. Very well.
Good, good. And are you getting the please end the preseason itch yet?
Yeah, I think we're getting ready. These are interesting times, these roster moves and
Yeah, just today
these
alone.
are kind of forks in the road. Like, this is a decision point, and once you go into the season, it at this point, like it's much more difficult to make an impact with a personnel move because it's the NFL. So,
Right, right.
so
Very good. Well, it's good to be with you all here tonight and everybody that will join us. Looking forward to hopefully getting some of you to chat with us. We might have a special guest that joins us here later on. And so looking forward to that as well. You mentioned roster moves being made today, or lack thereof, roster moves in some cases. Let's go ahead and dive right in here, Kevin. J.C. Treader announced his retirement today, as I'm sure you saw. And in the SI.com article, it said that the Vikings never called him back. What is your take on this? Do you think the Vikings felt like they had the position handled, or do you feel like this is a little bit of NFL politics here?
um, I, you know, I don't know. I don't. It's tough because what can the Vikings say about this? I mean, if they, why they weren't interested in him, what can they say? They can't say anything. They can't say they didn't think he was healthy. They didn't think he was good enough anymore. They just can't say anything. So, you know, his statement is just one stream or perspective in the whole thing. And I don't know if you know they never called him back. He could have been asking for 10 million a year, and that's why nobody calls him back. But either way, the Viking side can't really comment on it. So you're just left hanging there. And I think their actions are they didn't pursue the guy. So I think they in the grand scheme of things, I think they feel like they've got guys there that can do the job. Maybe it's Bradbury, but maybe they're comfortable with several other guys. I don't know.
You know, the whole politics thing, I'm sure you already know this, but for those that maybe are watching and are not sure, J.C. Treader is also the president of the NFLPA, the Players Association, and there are some differences between the NFLPA and some of the owners these days. And I shouldn't just say these days, it seems like that's probably the case quite frequently. But definitely these days in particular, as things always seem to be heated. So Bradbury wasn't offered anything. He was not offered anything by anybody, and that's pretty odd considering he is a top tier center when he is on the field. And so, do you really think that it's because of, his knees, or because teams weren't willing to, shell out a little bit extra money? I have a hard time believing that. I think there's something else underneath the surface here.
Well, and in his statement announcing he's retiring, he said he's going to double down on his efforts with the NFLPA. I don't know that that's a meaningful thing. Like that's a tongue-in-cheek thing, and there's. I think he believes that he was. He'd still be playing if it wasn't for his involvement there. Um, I don't know. I think that's a team by team situation. I don't think owners are smart enough to collude with one another on something like that. I think they're all just looking for a way to make a buck and win games, and I'm not sure which order that is sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure the buck is probably a little bit higher, maybe.
I mean, 32
But
teams didn't close the gap on signing the guy. It
Yep.
wasn't just the Vikings, so I don't know. And I know that Kwesi was in Cleveland the last 2 years. He would know what he's like in the building, and he would know, what his medicals were, and they're a team that could have used him, but they opted not to pursue him. So, I think that's all we can know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Vikings will regret this, because I think that's definitely a very big possibility that we could be sitting here. It's interesting. The Vikings also released Jordan Berry today, which we'll get to that here as well. But it's funny that two things that the Vikings did or didn't do today could both come back to bite them in the first game that they play.
Yep.
So, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And let's talk a little bit about the center options that the Vikings have. Obviously, Garrett Bradbury, we all have heard, okay, he's not what he was supposed to be, a top 20 draft pick for the Vikings, and he hasn't performed as well as a top 20 pick should perform, especially for a position that the Vikings really could use help at. Because Austin Schlottman, who nobody probably heard of other than maybe some Denver people before this year, no offense to the guy, but that's just the way it is. And he is the backup center, but he does have some promise, and I think he could potentially end up starting at some point this year, just based on how Garrett Bradbury performs. But I think you got to look at this situation and be like, why do you not bring in J.C. Tretter?
Yeah, because all these guys are, question marks. There's something in the plus column, and then there's something in the negative column, and then there's a question mark on some things. Bradbury is very athletic and effective in the run game, effective in the zone scheme, can do certain things that other centers can't, but he can't anchor against power, and that's something that good teams can isolate and attack. So that's a problem. The only read between the lines thing with him, and I think we talked about this last week, was he didn't dress or play for that game, and guys that didn't dress or play for that last game are starters, or they were legitimately injured. So whatever that means, I think the guy they really would like to have seen in there but hasn't because of injury is Chris Reed. They could very well already decide that they're just in good shape. The minute Bradbury struggles, Reed's ready to step in. I don't know. And then, Schlottman played very well in that last preseason game, against some good people early in the game. So, and, the undrafted free agent, Skol, actually put in some really nice reps in that game and has a bit of a mean streak, it appears. And they might just feel like they've got 3-4 options there. So,
it's interesting, T.Y. McGill, we've talked about him kind of almost like, he probably won't make the team, but now it's almost like he's kind of locked in here as a guy just based on what he's done here in the preseason. But we'll probably talk more about him later on. But just the idea, some of these guys we thought, oh, maybe they don't have a chance, but now you look at a guy like even Tristan Jackson. Does he make the team over Olabisi Johnson? I think that's a definitely possibility right now.
And we don't. This is our first rodeo with this regime, so we don't really.
They're not attached to anybody, right?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't really. We haven't seen them make these decisions for 5, 6, 7 years in a row. So, I mean, it's surprising. We don't know, what loyalty or affinity they have for players they inherited versus players they brought in. And so, I think there's been a little intrigue and surprise to, every move they've made to this point,
Yep. Yep. Well, I think it is going to be interesting week 1 right out of the gate to see how the Vikings handle a situation like Kenny Clark and whatever else Green Bay has on that defensive line. I know they've got some other talented players. You got Rashawn Gary over there. You got Preston Smith still. I know he's kind of, maybe wasn't as good as he was a couple of years ago, but still a solid player, especially when you put him next to those guys. So there's going to be a lot of testing going on early for Garrett Bradbury, and also testing to see if Kevin O'Connell can scheme around whatever the Packers are going to try and do to get to Garrett Bradbury, because you would have to think that the Packers are talking even maybe right now about this and like, okay, how can we get this ready for a guy like Garrett Bradbury that we know is not that good? How can we, exploit that? But that's something that, like I said, could come back to haunt the Vikings immediately in week 1. And if that's the case, then you're probably going to start to see Austin Schlottman more. And if things still don't improve, then you got to think about looking elsewhere, because if you lose multiple games, or close games, whatever, by one drive, you're driving down the field and Garrett Bradbury gives up a sack, gives up a pressure, whatever. I mean, that's the difference in the game. Then, what are you going to do? Like, you can't have this talented of an offense come down to one player potentially breaking the whole thing up here. I don't think, but.
Yeah. And it's kind of gotten to that point, really, the reason we're talking about it is they've kind of shored up most other things. And this is the one, legitimate question mark coming into it still is we just don't know. I think we've seen enough of almost every other position to be more comfortable with it. They'll be okay. But we haven't seen anything that just says, oh no, they're, like Ed Ingram has stepped up. And I think you feel like, well, right guard is covered. And I don't think anybody's stepped up at center yet to make us feel that way. I mean, Schlottman went from virtually no recognition by a Vikings fan to, he's played 2 preseason games now.
Yep.
Maybe he's the guy. I don't know. Maybe they saw enough of Chris Reed to know he's the guy. Or maybe they're just, they think they can work with Bradbury. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this could potentially backfire. And, maybe it is a situation where with the Rams, Brian Allen, their center, wasn't good for the first while, but then all of a sudden he found it in the last couple of years here. So maybe the Vikings can do something like that with Bradbury. We can hope, but I'm not too optimistic that will be the case. So, well, let's move on to Jordan Berry. He was the punter last year for the Vikings. He was released today, and it will be Ryan Wright who will be the new punter for the Vikings, at least for the foreseeable future. He has made some good punts. Let's give him credit where credit is due first. He's made some good punts here in the preseason. He's kind of impressed there in training camp and stuff of that nature as well. But I think the big question mark for me is he going to be able to hold successfully on field goals and extra points? I think that's the question I've had, and I'm sure after, those joint practices against San Francisco, a lot of other people are having those questions, because the only 2 field goals when I was there for the joint practices that were missed by Greg Joseph were holds by Ryan Wright. So that's where the concern lies. I think a lot of people sometimes maybe don't think about that aspect of it, but the chemistry between a holder, a snapper, and a kicker is very important, and we've seen that happen even with the Vikings.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure they're certainly not naive to that. And obviously they've seen a lot more reps than we have or has been reported. So they I don't think I think they know what they're doing. Whether it's the right move or not remains to be seen, but that's what they get paid for. I think the thing with a couple things that jump out at me about this decision to let Barry go, right after the special teams guy said, or at least it was suggested, it was a little more of a leading question that used, punt off than anything he said. He just kind of agreed with it. Um, and then they turn around and let the guy go the next day. But I think a couple of things, like the fact that Barry didn't really separate himself from Wright, and then I think I get the Wright is a Tulane guy. He's a smart, mature kid, and he's also a pretty good athlete. I mean, he has some good long-term potential. As far as having the right kind of mental toughness, and he's got the leg and the physical attributes that you look for. And the fact that Barry, like I said, just didn't separate himself, that they're just so neck and neck. I think this is, maybe one in the competitive rebuild column to, fill get comfortable, fill a position at, for the long foreseeable future. I mean, they conceivably have found their kicker, and maybe if they think they found their punter, that shores up a couple of spots with young guys that aren't making big money. They aren't into their second contract yet. So,
right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guy Dave in here. Dave, how's it going tonight with you?
Pretty good. Sorry, I couldn't make it on time.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Glad you're here now. We were just talking about Jordan Berry, as you probably heard, and Ryan Wright, the new punter for the Vikings. Let's go ahead and first of all tell the listeners and viewers where they can find you on Twitter and social media.
Well, I'm on a few places right now: Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at Skol World. Having a little problem with my Instagram, so not on that at the moment. And I am Minnesota Sports Talk on YouTube, and I go live on Purple Pocket Podcast, and I go live on the Purple Code on their Facebook. 15,000 followers over there on Facebook, and it's the Purple Code. We do a Tuesday night show, 9:00 Eastern, 8:00 Central.
All right, there you have it. I was able to join you and RAP last night on the Purple Pocket
Podcast. Yeah.
It's
and I'm
mouthful,
Minnesota Sports Talk, so yeah.
Yep,
Right there below.
That's right there, Minnesota Sports Talk on YouTube. So, Dave, good to have you on. Let's get your thoughts on Jordan Berry being released and the Vikings going with Ryan Wright as the punter here.
So, ever since we got rid of Kluwe, I don't think our problem necessarily has always been the kicker. I think it might have been the combination of snapper, holder, kicker. So when we got rid of Kluwe, we got rid of our holder, and I think we've been trying to get a decent holder ever since then. And I thought we found one with our punter that we just let go. So I'm a little worried, and I think it was Judd on Purple Daily said the two kicks that he had missed, that Greg Joseph had missed, it was Wright who was the holder on those two kicks.
Yep.
So it doesn't make me feel comfortable. Yes, I think he kicks the ball longer. I think he's probably a better punter. I don't necessarily want a 250-pound punter. I think weight might become an issue with longevity of an athlete, and I do think it comes into play when you're on your knees, getting ready to hold a ball. I'm big myself, so I can relate. I'm not going down on my knees too much in any athletic form. So I a little worry about we made the choice just because he can kick it farther. That's what I'm a little worried about.
Yeah, I think I should say that Kevin Seifert, the ESPN writer for the Vikings, tweeted out today that Ryan Wright was 6 for 6 as the holder on Greg Joseph kicks today. So
Oh, that was
that's
good.
encouraging. That's
Sweet.
encouraging. But, there's still that like, oh, what about those two? Because I was actually there for that joint practice against San Francisco when he missed those two. Ryan Wright came in and held. And
Was it so? It was true then. Yeah.
Yep. So it was definitely a new holder, and I think he was 1 for 3 when Ryan Wright held that day. But it's going to be interesting. I think we just talked about J.C. Tretter not coming to the Vikings and that situation.
Got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, go ahead and share those as well.
So you know that you may not know this, but MC Rap and Purple Pocket Podcast actually had tweeted with his father. Because his father was saying, he wanted him to go to Minnesota, and he was trying to get his son to go to Minnesota, and he told MC Rap that, yeah, we're trying. So it's a little weird. Like KOC came out today and says this is the first I heard of it, and he mentioned Kwesi by name, and I don't believe that a GM would tell a coach every single potential opportunity to pick up a player. So I can see him saying, if he was dead set on not even considering JC Tretter, I could see him not saying that to KOC. But if that's the case, if Kwesi didn't know about it either, I'm worried about who's taking the calls, who's making the decisions. They have that collaboration thing going. Who did his agent call? So I want to hear from Kwesi now. Now I want to hear from Kwesi. I don't want to hear about you burning down the QB position in the offseason. I want to hear whether or not you considered JC Tretter or why not. That's kind of what I want to hear now.
And Kevin made a good point earlier. I don't think you're going to get that because I don't think
probably not.
I think there is something to do with maybe the politics side of it, with him being the NFLPA president. And if that is the case, then for sure Kwesi will not say anything about it.
And if he thinks it's a health thing, Kwesi's not going to say that either.
Right.
Because that's, like a medical issue. He can't talk about that.
Well,
he's not going to talk about if the guy was asking for 10, 12 million either. He's not going to talk about. So like all the reasons he could give, he can't really say.
Well, I mean, one thing you can do is to say whether or not you even considered him, since he did call. Did you and did you do what he said he did? Yeah. You did, and not call him back. Like you didn't even consider that. I mean, right now you look like in a bad situation. I'm a Kwesi fan. I thought it was a great hire. I'm a fan of KOC. Great hire. When you hear things like this, you're like, gosh, we didn't even think about it. We didn't even check for his medicals. That's a simple thing. You do that to rookies coming into the league. You check their medicals. You check every free agent's medicals that you are considering. Makes it look like we didn't consider him at all. And, this guy was apparently growing up a Vikings fan. He had said that in that interview. And it would have been the cake topper, as he put it, of his career to go play for the Vikings. Here's a guy that really wanted to play for the Vikings, it sounds like. And we didn't return his calls. So, I mean, a guy of his ability, 9-year vet, given a player like that the respect, yes, and it makes it sound like it was political.
Yep. Anything else you want to add, Kevin?
I just don't believe it. There's just something more to it.
My thought was the knee, but he apparently was healthy after week 7.
Them, they didn't return our calls. Kwesi knows his medicals. He was with Cleveland the last 2 years. He knows his medicals. I don't know. It isn't like JC Tretter can't pick up the phone and call the guy. everybody with the Browns has his phone number.
Well, yeah, I'm not taking J.C. Tretter's word for it either.
No,
That's why I
it's
want,
just, there's something, there's a reason, and all the explanations they probably can't talk about because they're all negative.
You got to know.
Tretter kind of threw the shot over the ball, like he heaped it over there, which is reflective of the whole tension as the NFLPA guy and the league. Like, and then his statement, he's going to double down on his efforts with the NFLPA. Like, I don't know. These aren't endearing things to collaboration.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So
we got to collaborate here. So,
well, Kwesi is going to be asked about it if he ever takes the stand or ever takes the podium. So that's something that will be asked of him. And I definitely, if Judd gets over his appendix, is the first person going to ask it if he can.
Well, Chris Thomason isn't afraid to ask anything.
Yeah, Chris Thomason, he'll ask anything. Yeah. He'll talk to anybody. He'll do anything.
Thomason, man.
He is a character.
Anything that you're thinking. Like,
I've grown to
appreciate. Even if it didn't go through your filter to actually say it, he'll ask that question. So
yeah, he'll tweet out like, "Yeah, he hung up on me."
Yep.
He literally said, "Yeah, I asked him this, and then he hung up on me." And on his tweets, it's hilarious. It's funny.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, we have a new quarterback in town. We haven't even gotten to talk about him yet. Nick Mullins traded to the Vikings on Monday. Very reasonable price, and might not even have to pay anything if he doesn't make the team. But you would think if he doesn't play in the preseason game on Saturday that he has to make the team, right? Because you can't just cut him after he didn't even play in a game for you. I wouldn't think. They must. I would assume they have to be thinking that he's at least going to make the team.
I would think so too. I mean, I think it's a conditional pick on him making the team, but I think it just, he gets here, he fits in, no red flags. We're just trying to get him up to speed, and if he's ready to play, maybe he gets some snaps, maybe he doesn't. But I don't think they made this trade just to check him out. Like I think they already are more comfortable with him than they are the two guys they had long term. It's just a matter of who's ready to play.
Well, they kind of dig themselves with a hole when they say, like KOC interviewed, "Oh, we're liking him so far. Everything's looking good. He's got a great. I've admired him from afar, and it's just all these glowing things he says about Nick Mullins, and then there is a scenario where both our backup quarterbacks who play in the game on Saturday have a great game, and Mullins didn't get an opportunity. Because I don't think he's going to, like right now, I would say 60-40, he doesn't play. Like 60% he doesn't play. And then the other two guys fight it out. And what if they both have a good game? There's a scenario. And like you said, Kevin, is that it's conditional. If he doesn't make the team, we don't lose the pick. So we don't lose anything there. But for me, Nick Mullins is a guy that has a higher ceiling than the other two right now. And that is he's orchestrated 2 blowouts in the NFL that I know of and seen film of. And he looked good doing it, like 350 and 3 touchdowns, for on a San Francisco team that I like that opportunity there that Sean Mannion will not give us. We can't put him out against a bad Bears team, let alone, to win a game that really matters.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything Mond and Mannion could do that would really move the needle on how much they've already seen from them. And I mean, it'd be nice if they both played well, and maybe they work out a deal with Mannion to be the veteran guy on the practice squad. And he dresses until Mullins is ready, but I don't know. Mond is probably 3 or practice squad at best at this point, almost no matter how well he plays.
quick answer to my dad's question here. I believe Garoppolo has not been released actually yet. I think there's a very good chance of that happening after Tuesday or on Tuesday, but I don't think he's been released yet, according to what I have seen. But do you guys have anything else different?
I think he's still 49ers property, and his price tag, his salary just is not going to mesh with Cousins at that for the Vikings.
Well, one of the
I
situations.
think that's one of the things about Mullins is he's a cheap backup. He's like a cheap Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Has some experience and has won.
So what you're saying is Cousins is going to get hurt, and Mullins is going to lead us to an NFC Championship loss against Philadelphia.
Yep, that's what's going to happen.
It might have sounded that way, but
well, like San Francisco can't really. I wouldn't.
I think
if
they can
release them. If they release him, they're stuck with the money, right?
But here's the
stuck
thing.
With the cap.
Here's the thing. I believe that his contract has very little left of guaranteed money on it. So, let's go ahead and take a look at.
I'll look at it. You keep talking. I can go look at
it. So there's only $2 million dead cap on his contract. So.
Oh, really?
So if they
then that would make sense. Then
if they would release him, they'd only be swallowing $2 million, and I think that's
they
definitely
would do that.
doable. But yeah, I think that's probably a big reason why nobody's traded for him anyway, is because of the amount of money that he's going to get. And I think that's why, Carolina too is more safe with going with Baker, and who knows what San Francisco's price tag was for Garoppolo anyway, but
it's going.
He'll get paid more by somebody than we want to pay. I just assume that.
Yep. I agree. But yeah, I'm excited to have a quarterback that could actually lead the team to a 500 record if Cousins was going to go out for, a few games or whatever. And 500 maybe is a little bit optimistic, but I think that Mullins definitely is going to give your team a lot better chance than either one of those guys, Sean Mannion or Kellen Mond. I think the Vikings probably knew what they had on their hands going into that preseason game last week, but they wanted to just maybe give them one more chance, those guys, one more chance to really prove themselves. And then they're like, okay, this is pretty clear. We need to make a change.
Yeah. I think Bond was on the cusp, and then bad interception and another really bad interception.
Yeah, 2 really bad throws.
Like bad decisions, bad throws, and but he looked like he was flashing enough to maybe overcome a mistake like that. But there would just be no confidence in winning games with him as the starter.
And we can treat this as like it's his extended rookie year. I mean, he didn't get a fair look last year, or any attention. It sounds like in practice, and I think he didn't get like Sloter didn't get any attention. He got interviewed by I forget what channel it was, but he got interviewed in the off season, and they asked him questions, and he said that when he was interviewed on his exit interview, he was like. Spielman asked him, why were you playing so well in games and in practices we never, heard anything. He says, well, I didn't get a practice. In the preseason in the camp, I was getting 6 or 7 snaps of practice. And then when it got to the season, I got no snaps. So, I mean, this is the only opportunity I ever got. So I get 20, I get 20 throws in a game. I'm going to do better. And that's his viewpoint. So I think that's true, is that previous regime, and this would be in Mond's case, is he probably never saw any time at all except on the scout team. I just assume that was the case.
Yeah. That's probably a good assumption. I think Zimmer had him so far in the doghouse last year with that, and even if Mond was better than Mannion last year. I think just the pure fact that Mannion doesn't throw interceptions and knows how to be a good veteran, at least out there. Not that he's a good. I just said veteran. I didn't say good veteran quarterback. I think that is why he didn't even get that chance in Green Bay last year, because even though Mond may have more talent, I think he was going to also be more likely to throw up a duck and possibly cost you the game on one play or two plays, whatever. So,
well, and Zimmer knew he was going to get fired anyway.
yeah.
And he was making a statement to Spielman, this was nobody's going to tell me how to do it going down. And it was a political thing. And if he was going to be back next year, he might have had a different view, like, well, okay, I got to do what's best for the organization because I might still be in charge. But I think he knew he was done either way. So
I mean, this is a franchise that made Leslie Frazier start Josh Freeman. I mean, that was one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Man. I still remember that, and I remember actually being somewhat excited, and then
I bought his rookie card. I was like, all right, man, let's go.
Hey, at least you didn't buy the jersey, though. At least you didn't buy the jersey.
I paid $3 for his rookie card.
I gotta wonder if there was actually any Vikings Josh Freeman jerseys out there before that game or during that game.
Not.
Like, what was he on the team for, like a week?
No, well, I think he was our backup the next week. I think he was on the field as a backup the next week.
I don't think they had time to make Josh Freeman jerseys.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he played a game and it's
like the
canceled the Freeman order.
It was like he was throwing to a ghost.
Yeah,
like he throw it in the middle.
He wasn't ready to play at all.
It was like there was a quarterback years ago that I think it was with the Giants, and he did not know the playbook, and they put him in the game, and he basically lied that he did. And he goes in the game, and he was like throwing it to just nobody. He had no idea what the plays were, and I can't remember. It was like 20 years ago, but he admitted it on camera after the game, and he never played in the NFL ever again. He forgot. He didn't bother to learn the playbook. Because he was like the third string, he thought he'd never play, and sure enough, two quarterbacks get hurt. He's got to go in there, and he told the truth and said, "I didn't know the plays."
I think of his tenure as the gif of Homer Simpson's dad going into the bar, hanging his hat, and then going around in a circle, picking up the hat and leaving. Yeah. That's pretty much exactly how his tenure was in Minnesota for Josh Freeman. So we have too many of those moments in Minnesota sports, especially with the Vikings. It seems that we just have too many of these bad memories of quarterbacks, too many bad memories of certain players. We need more good memories here. Come on.
I think Kirk Cousins is now like tied Culpepper for the most consecutive games as a QB for the starting QB for the Vikings, and is only going to be behind, Fran Tarkenton because he has 7 consecutive seasons as the starting quarterback. It was his second stint. He had 7.
Yeah.
So it's like we hadn't had anybody that had more than 3 years other than Culpepper, Cousins, and Fran Tarkenton, and we've been a franchise for 61 years. I'm like, God, that's crazy.
It's been some rough days, and I've only been a part of this pretty much since the early to mid 2000s. I can't imagine what it's been like for you guys. Like
1973.
I was born in 73, so
that was my first year. First game I ever saw was against the Rams in 1973. They lost 10-9. Tarkenton threw an interception to Rick Kay in the end zone in overtime to lose the game. That's what I remember anyway.
My earliest memory is Les Steckel.
Oh my God.
That I can remember, like actually watching games. I remember Les Steckel and how bad we were, and and Grant coming back the next year, and then we moved on.
The Vikings defense 2 years ago was reminiscent of the defense in the Les Steckel year, 1984. It was a disaster.
Or the final year of Leslie Frazier.
This was even worse.
Even worse.
Yeah.
I think last year it was historically bad. There's the stat there that we out of like I don't know how many
the final 2 minutes
480 like I don't know, it was like 20 years they've kept this stat for the last 2 minutes of the half, last 2 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And there was like 486 teams if you count all 32 teams every year. You have 486 teams. Forgive me, I'm using that number because that's the number I remember, but we were 486. We were dead last by like a ways. Like we've given up 7 more points than the next team a game in that amount in that time. It's like crazy, historically bad to be dead last out of that many teams. That's insane.
I literally don't think you can be worse. I don't think it's possible. Like you could try really hard. I don't know if you could be any worse. But it'll be interesting to see how things progress on the defensive side, I think, this year. Because again, like even not only the 2-minute defense, but the passing defense and especially the run defense, just atrocious again last year. Like, again, it's hard to be as bad as they were last year. Like, there's got to be some regression to the mean at the very least here.
Because we had spots of goodness. Even in the beginning of that second Packers game, we were playing good D to start the game. Like the first 3 or 4, like 4 drives probably, we were playing good defense. They weren't scoring on us. But too many 3 and outs. We couldn't move the ball. So
and our defense realized, okay, this is Sean Mannion. We're screwed. So we're just gonna,
the entire time.
The roll over here.
The defense might as well have pitched, put the bench out there for them to sit down because they were getting tired. They had to get some rest somehow. The defense was out there the entire field. I think the entire game. I think we probably had a 20-minute disparity in time of possession. It was so bad. That was one of the worst. That the Cleveland and then the Dallas game are like the 3 that stand out about how bad we played.
Try watching some early footage of the days of the Bucks.
Yeah,
pretty rough days there.
What that coach say is people ask me about my team's execution, and I said I'm all for it. I forget the name of that coach, but he was a character. Can't think of his name.
I think I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, because you know who said it last year was Notre Dame's head coach.
Yes,
he said that. He said that in a post-game interview, and everybody went crazy, and nobody realized he was quoting the old NFL. Old NFL coach from Tampa.
Yeah, he's not trying to execute his players, like literally kill them.
Like look, I can't believe he said he was going to execute his players.
Not quite.
Well, he might have gotten canceled if he said the same thing.
Oh no! Now he's doing TikToks over down in LSU. So I don't know if you saw his recruiting videos. He get a recruit, and they did these videos of him doing a dance party basically with every recruit that came to LSU. It was actually quite embarrassing. I'm a closet Notre Dame fan, so it was pretty embarrassing to see your ex-coach dancing on TikTok. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this Vikings-Broncos game. I don't think there's a lot to really be excited for, I guess, but there is some intrigue because of some of the position battles. And I think one of the interesting position battles, and I mentioned this earlier to Kevin, was wide receiver number 6, because I do believe there's going to be 6. Maybe you disagree there, Dave, but I think there will be 6 wide receivers, and I think that you've got to really think about Tristan Jackson potentially beating out BC Johnson here, and I think Jalen Naylor is probably number 5, pretty close to being a sure thing, I think, right there.
Well, like in my last 53, in my last 2 53-man predictions, I'm a big Naylor fan. I said after the draft that he was our biggest value pick in the draft because I thought he was that good. I compared him, not that he was as good as Diggs, he's not, but the situation of him being hurt all the way through college was so like mirror to Diggs being hurt all the way through college. He was having a great senior year, broke his hand, and then that held him back, and he falls the 6th round. So I think he is a NFL receiver, and any other team he's making it, possibly, because we're just so deep there. My thinking probably is like a Tristan Jackson, and BC played so much better this last game that a Tristan Jackson and BC made the team, and I had Naylor off the team because I think maybe he wasn't as thought well of, that we could actually get him through waivers and under our practice squad just because of his production in college wasn't there. And, like the numbers weren't there. But maybe NFL scouts are just way, fine tooth comb and really have an eye on Naylor and could steal him away. And that'll go in the way into the decision. Do we really want to try to lose him? But I think Tristan Jackson played well enough to be on this team. He looks pretty solid out there.
And I do think that Tristan Jackson probably has a better chance of making it through waivers, but I think than Jalen Naylor anyway. But I do think that you got to keep both of them, even though I know Cousins likes BC Johnson. Is BC Johnson more talented than Tristan Jackson or Jalen Naylor? I don't think so. I think that he's got maybe more possession ability maybe than those guys do currently, but I don't know if that's worth keeping him or not.
I'm treating BC Johnson like they talked about BC Johnson like they talk about Bradbury, right? Like Bradbury is not playing in these games because he's our starter. Like they've already decided that, it seems to me, right? So they've decided that. So I'm thinking like when they were talking about BC Johnson, early in the year, and then how Cousins raved about him, and he did look good in this last game, and are we really hurting ourselves that much when we got Myron Mitchell? I don't know if you ever seen Myron Mitchell's college tape. It is one highlight after another, diving catch after diving catch. That catch he made against Mond, that's like every catch he made in college, which is kind of amazing. So to have a Tristan Jackson, Myron Mitchell, BC Johnson, and Jalen Naylor, and you only could take 2 of them, are you really that hurt that you lost a 6th round pick, an undrafted free agent, a 5th round pick, or a 7th round pick like BC? Are you taking 2 of those guys that will help you win this year? Who knows there? It would really help if Jalen Naylor won the punt return job, but it don't look like he can track the ball because he let that ball bounce way the hell off to the left, and it went down to the 2-yard line. And that just can't happen. You got to catch that ball.
Yep. Kevin, any thoughts on the wide receiver battle there?
I think Beasley's going to make it over Tristan Jackson. I just don't think Jackson has significant upside potential that's really beyond what they know Beasley can do. I think they feel like Naylor has some ceiling still, and that they want to tap into that. I think maybe an underrated concern is the punt returning job, because Amir Smith-Marset hasn't done anything to inspire confidence, and neither has Naylor. And like I know Smith-Marset can make plays, but I don't know. I don't trust him back there on punts or kickoffs, quite frankly. So I don't know. That could be a problem area.
That's one of the reasons why
they
I was
may
like,
end up putting Thielen back there because you just need.
He
somebody
did return punts at one time. That was my concern about getting rid of our holder for a kicker, is that I'm already worried about our punt returner. I don't want to worry about that too. Yeah. I don't want to worry about our special teams anymore. Okay. We actually had pretty good special teams. I think the last 2 years, I'm not mistaken, they were pretty solid. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I got to worry about it again. That's what I don't want to worry about. But yeah, I think Jalen Naylor has got plenty of talent. I don't know what the coaches are going to be thinking there, because they like BC Johnson. And if you go look back at Tristan Jackson, he's a 2nd-year player, right? his senior year, he was a late bloomer, but even though it was Syracuse, he dominated on the field at Syracuse when he played. So if you go back and look at him, he's fast, he can leap, and he catches with his hands. He's grown on me to the fact that I think he can make the team. But you're right, he probably has a easier chance at going to the practice squad than Naylor. So I think that's probably a good point.
Were you going to say something, Kevin?
Yeah, I think both him and Mitchell, you could get them on the practice squad. Low probability of losing them.
That's where Mitchell was last year. So.
And if you did lose them, then they probably have a better chance to play wherever they're going anyway. And I just don't see like incredibly high ceilings with either of those guys.
And Mitchell didn't do himself any favors dropping that ball that was right in his chest that Vaughn threw him.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's where BZ Johnson he does all these little things, and he's really precise with his routes, and he's where he's supposed to be making his breaks, and he can compete for the ball.
I think that's where one of the things Tristan stands out. If you've seen some of the highlights, and you probably have, I'm assuming one of the biggest highlights is Tristan mossing somebody, on a go route over two defenders in practice. And that's where I was talking about his leaping ability and because he was one of those guys that has like a 38-inch vertical, and he's like 6'2". Like 6'1", 6'2", so he's not short. So he's got that ability, and the fact that I believe he catches what I saw in college, what I've seen so far is he's catching with his hands. So I think that's where we haven't seen it yet on a preseason game, but I think maybe the coaches, like that one play that got on Twitter, that they're seeing it in practice. And I don't know. He's just grown on me. For me in the beginning, I was like, Jalen Naylor's making this team. We can't put this guy to waivers. There's no way. And now I'm like, hey, best guy wins. Tristan Jackson showing me something. Jalen Naylor can't catch a punt. I'm like, what do we do here? He dropped a kickoff return too. Jalen Naylor did in the first game. It's like, what are we doing? Come on, man. You make this team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they decide to go with. I think even with Amir's struggles, I think he's still pretty much sealed in at that number 4 spot right now. But
they seem very committed to him. Like they know he's, even as a punt returner, they seem very committed to giving him the reps to get it down.
I felt he was our best receiver in this last preseason game. I don't know about you guys, but but there was not that many throws that were caught. Yeah.
Well, maybe something to talk about with him is, I know he returned a lot of punts at Iowa. As a Hawkeye fan, I watched him do it.
Actually, kicks though. KOC says he never returned a punt in college.
Oh, he didn't return a punt. Okay.
He never, but he did. He practiced it, and that's why he's. Anyway, someone asked him about, and the question was, this is their special teams coach, not KOC. He was saying that someone asked him, can Ty Chandler return punts? He says, well, maybe, like ISM, he at least practiced catching punts in college, but yeah, he was strictly a kick returner in college.
Okay.
He has the traits to be a dynamic punt returner.
We actually released the
You're right. You're right. It was just kick returns.
He needs to just the judgment stuff. And
Naylor caught like 9 or 10 punts in college, if I'm not mistaken, like in one season.
Yep.
So, but the guy we actually, Thomas Hennigan, actually had the most experience at punt returners on our roster, and of course he got injury designation, and so I think he's still a Viking. He's just not on the roster. I think he's on the IR, but he had 61 punt returns in college at Appalachian State. So he was like the one that had the most experience returning punts, and we let him go. So I didn't think he was going to make the team. He's a little on the slow side.
Yeah. Very good. Any other things to watch for in the upcoming preseason game? Any other position battles you guys are keeping a close eye on here?
Let you
Whoever
go first.
plays on the offensive line, they're competing for backup spots. And
Do you think Ali Udo will make it?
I think he's on the bubble. I think he's very much on the bubble.
It feels like they're leaning have Brandel to make the
Lowe?
team.
Yeah.
Well, I saw Lowe a little bit in that first game, and I was like, hey, this is a guy that's still worth a project. And I've said this, he's just his physical traits. He's not as athletic as a Darisaw, and he's nowhere near, his talent, but he's got like an inch long. He has inch longer arms and inch longer hands. It's crazy length. Because Darisaw's got pretty decent length. This is a crazy length. And I just think he's so mature, he's got his family. If you ever heard of him in an interview, he's just so mature. Like he had to, he like decided I'm going to be this, a father and a family man at his age. And he's got, I think, 2 kids. He's a rookie. And I think we can sneak him on the practice squad. No problem. That's my thoughts. And that he's a development there. But yeah, I wouldn't mind having him, but he didn't show me enough yet. And Brandel apparently is being really well thought of that I think he is. But my big concern is Jesse Davis isn't playing in these games, right? He hasn't played.
Yeah. Well, I think he's still dealing with a little bit of an injury too, isn't he?
So my worry though is that they still think he's the starter at right guard when we all know who should be starting at right guard.
Yep. I don't think they will. I think last week he definitely was some questions with injury because I think he tweaked his knee or something earlier that week. Yeah, Jesse Davis.
Okay.
So I think that's why he didn't play in the preseason game. I'm not 100% sure on that, but
I hope that's the reason. Not that I want him injured, but I hope that's the reason why he didn't play. Because if he's the starter and that's why they didn't play him in that game, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Double trouble right next to each other if that's the case.
No.
Yep.
He's won. Ed Ingram's just flat out won that job. Now he had 2 bad plays in that game. One where he went out on that screenplay and whiffed on 2 defenders.
Yep.
Just whiffed on him. And then like a little bit later, he gave up that sack. Although Mon held the ball a little too long, he gave up the sack. He was beat. But those are really the only 2 plays I saw. Otherwise than that, he was, like a road grader to me.
And he was beat by Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the play
Kinlaw's
I'm talking about.
Good last day.
Ultra talented. So
yeah, but it was enough. He gave Mond enough time to get rid of the ball.
He did.
So
I thought Ingram was the maturity that Ingram showed in how he responded to the Chris Thomason style question. Like, he could be pretty bad by one play, and he knew exactly what he did wrong.
Yeah,
and said, I gotta clean that up. I don't know. Some guys wouldn't have acknowledged it or taken that way. They would have, gone the Bashad Breeland response. And, it's a pretty big, opposite end of the spectrum with how Ingram responded to being called out on a specific play. So
I was going to quick play a video, KOC kind of answering a question on Nick Mullins' status here for this preseason game.
Yeah, super positive early on with Nick. I feel like he's been at this building as much as I have since he got here. He works incredibly hard. He's already fitting in, with those other guys in the room with Chris and Gerard. I just think, my experience of, never having coached him before, but have known him a little bit, and then obviously a lot of people that you talk to around the league that have been around him. Have nothing but great things to say about him, and then you actually get him in the building and you start to, watch him interact with his teammates on both sides. It's exciting. He's gotten a couple reps here and there. We'll continue to get him a little bit of work here and there, and we're still in the process of determining kind of where he's at, being able to take some snaps on Saturday.
There you go. Still in the determination process. I think Kevin O'Connell's probably going to give us a lot of that this year. And you know what?
He's been
That's
so
okay.
he's been so exhaustively well trained for me.
Yeah. I
Ring
talk
around
about
the
him being a
rosy.
politician.
He
Yeah.
is the opposite end of the spectrum of Zimmer.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is really.
You know, Zimmer would have
He
probably
took the
just said,
coaching and-
we'll keep that in house, or don't worry about it, or something. You know, he would have just said something real,
Yeah.
like, don't worry about it.
because I decided to.
I'll tell you when I have to, basically. But what advantage does it do at this point for the opponent? I mean, it's a preseason game. Come on.
I mean, he could tell us his goal, like, yeah, we want to play him in this game right there, you know, because he's been asked if we could play, play the starters, and he's like circumnavigated that question too. And this is the same type of answer. To me, it's like, no, he's not playing him. He's not going to play him.
Well, the only thing
people are paying, $34 a ticket to come and see this game. I can't really tell you we're not even going to try. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see if he does play, how long he plays. I don't think he should be too worried about like how he looks. Like maybe Vikings fans will get wrapped up in that a little bit more than they should, but don't be so wrapped up in it because he's just learning the offense this week. If he comes out and lays an egg, I mean, what we just spent a 7th round pick. I mean, big
that's
whoop.
a good point. Like I think he just needs to show the traits that he brings to the table. His ability to move around within the pocket, make throws you're supposed to make. If he messes a play up, I don't think that's a big deal. I think they just want to get him. I could see him playing late in the game. When
if he gets to know like 10 plays, these are the 10 plays we're gonna run. Here's 5 running plays, here's 5 passing plays. You got those down. And once you're done with those, you get through one series, you're out. So I could see him doing that.
Yep, for sure. Well, gentlemen, we always do a little segment called Final Statements here. What are your final statements on the Vikings as we head into the final preseason game? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you a little bit of both? Are you cautiously optimistic like most Minnesota sports fans? We'll start with Kevin.
I'm not nervous about the last preseason game.
That's good.
I think
I was a little worried about you there for a second.
I think their defense has shown that it's going to be significantly improved and potentially really, really stern. I think they could be a 12-win team this year if they get out of the gate strong. If they win that Green Bay game, I think they're rolling.
That's a huge game. I think for a lot of reasons, obviously, but get that group confidence right out of the gate against your division rival. I mean, that would be huge. Dave, what do you got?
Well, the news about Kirk Cousins throwing 2 picks a day in the scrimmage and 2 almost picks, and the defense dominating is good and bad. That's but I know what our offense is capable of doing. We were a top 10 offense last year, but should have been a top 5 with the talent we have. So, and I was talking to you last night about how that people say that Kirk Cousins needs to be perfect or whatever. And I'm like, hey, with the offensive line he's had with us the 4 years, it's been ranked 27th or worse. That all he needs is for the offensive line to be average. All he needs is the defense to be average. Yep. And what do you know? The Rams last year, their defense was 15th ranked. So that defense was not as good as the year before. They were a top 5 defense the year before. They fell to 15th. Also, and I don't know about Aaron Donald throwing helmets or hitting Bengals over the heads with helmets today. I don't know if you've seen that. You should see the video of that.
Did not see that.
I don't know. He might get suspended for that. But, that defense was 15th ranked. The fact that I believe Ed Ingram has repaired this offensive line if he starts, I think that brings up to us being an average offensive line or better. And then I think our defense, with the talent we still have and brought in, and the change that nobody has a book on us, I think we can be easily, a top 15 defense. So I'm just utterly optimistic that now we have, an 8-win team that's now improved, brought up their offensive line and brought up their defense. I would only think that we would improve off of last year's record. And I agree. If we beat the Packers and the Eagles, we potentially go 6-0. Because our schedule after that is
their confidence, the confidence of the players.
Yeah, it would just snowball.
They're going to really be having fun playing football again, and they're going to feel comfortable in their own skin, and the camaraderie and the culture is really great. What tests it is if they lose, once they lose a game, that really matters. But if they
bringing in Harrison Phillips, who's a leader, he's just a leader, and bringing in Zadarius Smith, who is just he's like Griffith was, except without unfortunately the mental issues, but he was the guy that sparked the defense. And now we got a guy that Daniil Hunter is not, and that is the guy that brings everybody out of their shell. And then you got a solid dude like Harrison Phillips. I thought we brought in really good people. And even Hicks is he's a guy that I felt like a similar personality like Daniil Hunter, where he's here to work and play. And I just want to do this. And then the rookies we got in, we brought in speed. We brought in Asamoah, Seen, Booth. Even Caleb Evans all have speed. So I think we just accentuated what our strengths already were and brought in a couple leaders that really can change the dynamic of the attitude of our defense. I felt really good about it.
Very good. Yeah, I think the depth has improved since Kevin and I last talked. We were worried about depth on this team. I think it has improved. We've seen more of it, but I still think there is still a lot of unproven depth on this team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see that improve in this preseason game and then see it take its course throughout the regular season, because if one of those guys gets hurt, even if Patrick Jones is a solid player, he's not going to be Daniil Hunter. He's not going to be Zadarius Smith out there. So right. I think that would still concern me if one of those guys got hurt for the defense's sake. But it is nice to have both of them instead of, only having Daniil last year.
And what's Daniil going to look like? What's Daniil Hunter going to really look like? I haven't really got to see him with my own eyes yet. So I'm a little, figure that out.
Yep. So very good. Well, Dave, hey, thanks for hopping in here with us today. No and once again, why don't you go ahead and tell our viewers and listeners where they can find you and your work and what you guys do over there.
Well, Minnesota Sports Talk is my YouTube channel. I go live pretty regularly on Purple Pocket Podcast, and I'm part of the Purple Code. We go live on Tuesday nights, and that's a little more structured, but it's all fan-generated, Viking fan-generated content. We answer questions. We had 20, 30 people that come on and are really active on the chat. So it's pretty fun. So come out and check it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get you guys on here more, and hopefully I'll be able to get on there. Maybe even Kevin will want to join every now and then too. I know he is always down to talk Vikings when he's available. So it's good to have you on here. Dave, Kevin, appreciate you joining as always. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Skol Purple Podcast here on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, a 3-stream platform for the first time. So we got that all set up, and it's been fun having both of these guys with me. And remember, the Skol Purple Podcast is by Vikings fans for Vikings fans. And so that is why we enjoy bringing you this content every week and look forward to the rest of the season. A little bit of an announcement. We might have a couple of NFC North division rival previews next week. So go ahead and mark that on your calendar. We'll have to wait and see exactly what days they are released, but looking forward to hopefully having that content for you guys as well. Well, gentlemen, as we always say, as Vikings fans, Skol.
Skol.
Let's go, guys. Let's go.